Hello, everyone. This is Devin Thorpe for the CrowdFundBeat, and I'm excited to have with us today the CEO and founder of Seed Equity, a new crowdfunding site, a registered broker-dealer, Todd Crosland. Todd, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you.
Great to be here, Devin. Appreciate you having me.
Todd, you have an extraordinary background. This isn't your first rodeo. Tell us a little bit about your experience with Interbank FX.
Sure, that's a futures and commodities brokerage firm that I founded in 2001, and we grew to quite a large company. We had customers in 140 countries, and we onboarded about 250 retail traders from around the world, and we had an office in Beijing, China, Seoul, Korea, Hong Kong, Sydney, Australia, London, and then Salt Lake. And we were a regulated entity with the CFTC and the National Futures Association. Then we were also regulated with ASIC in Australia. And a little bit about Interbank FX. So, large company, we were doing 80 to $100 billion in trading volume each and every month. Customers from, as I mentioned earlier, 140 countries around the world. So
now that was 80 to 100 billion with a B.
With a B, yep. So large volume business. We sold it to a large company out of Tokyo, Japan, called Monex Group in 2011. And then basically what we've done is we've taken our experience from a network of investors from around the world, and we registered with the SEC and in FINRA to become a registered broker-dealer, and the business model will entail really finding the best and the brightest entrepreneurs from around the world, and to help provide seed and growth capital for them.
Well, as we think about crowdfunding, there are a lot of different dimensions by which we can divide that universe, and I just want to get your take as to how you see the sort of pros and cons, the pluses and minuses of some of these dimensions. For instance, some crowdfunding sites are highly curated, and so the experience for an entrepreneur is much like approaching a venture capitalist at the highly curated end. At the other end of the extreme, some platforms are wide open, and anyone can put a deal on the platform. What do you see as being the pros and cons, pluses and minuses of those extreme models?
Well, I think so. We're dealing in a regulated world as a member of FINRA and regulated by the SEC in the United States, and so we have a different set of rules that we need to abide by as a broker-dealer investment bank than say a crowdfunding site out of the Bahamas. And we have very stringent requirements to background checks on the founders, officers, and 20% shareholders, and also vet the company, vet the idea. Review all their documents, make sure everything's in order. So before we get a company that we let them post on our site, and they'll file the private placement memorandum with the SEC, they would be fully vetted, and we'll do our due diligence. And so I think that a company that has to, one, be regulated and follow these stringent rules, there's probably a better opportunity to weed out some of the bad characters, as opposed to a site that would allow anybody to post a project on. So I think this will be a better option in protecting investors long term, to have a thorough vetting process.
Yeah. There's another dimension on which we can measure or describe crowdfunding platforms, and that's the investor audience. I think some sites will cultivate and build an investor audience, and others may do a little of that, but really not meaningfully, and they'll leave the funding exercised largely up to the issuers that come to the site. I wonder if you'd comment about the pros and cons of that dimension of crowdfunding.
So with our past company, Interbank FX, we had a sub-site called IBFX Connect, and we connected traders from all over the world, and they were able to talk about trading the euro, the yen, gold, silver, platinum, and we created a really global investing community to talk about investing strategies and techniques. And we've really taken that success we had with our last company, although it's a completely different industry. We're not trading currencies in gold and platinum, but it's the same principle where we think an open platform for discussion amongst investors and issuers will help, one, educate the investors, and two, help vet the companies with the community. We call it the wisdom of the crowd.
Right. One of the things that you did successfully with Interbank FX was to scale and to bring in, and of course it was inherent in the model, but a big international audience. How do you see that international audience playing in the crowdfunding world now?
So I think it will be, it will present more challenges with the international audience, especially international companies. We would look for companies that are willing to register, say, become Delaware C Corps, even though they might be an overseas entity, just to simplify the process, not only for whatever round that we're involved in, but for future rounds or for an eventual, exit or a takeover from another company. So, having a streamlined process where there's a common set of corporate structure will be important. But if you look at globally, there's we call it, we have an office in San Francisco, then an office in Salt Lake City. And as we spend so much time in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, there's obviously an ecosystem down there for starting and funding companies. It's the premier ecosystem in the world. And we're thinking that we'd like to expand that same type of ecosystem to let other people participate in this process, both companies and investors.
Yeah. Now, another dimension on which we can sort of distinguish among crowdfunding sites is the regulatory / fee structure kind of model. And let me just put forward 3 different examples so it's clear what I'm talking about. But there are some operating with what we might describe as a venture capital model. They use a regulatory exemption for venture capitalists to operate their platform, take no cash fees, and instead take a carry on the back end. There are other platforms like Seed Equity that are registered broker-dealers, full-fledged, grown-up broker-dealers. And then there's a new category that isn't in operation yet, but that FINRA has established that will be a sort of limited broker-dealer that is authorized to operate a crowdfunding platform. I wonder if you would comment on the advantages and disadvantages of those 3 models from the standpoint of an issuer looking to figure out and choose which platform to use.
Sure. So we look carefully. At the regulatory path before we started Seed Equity Ventures, and having come from a highly regulated, futures and commodities brokerage firm in the past, we knew the requirements and the expense of being regulated. But then we also looked at the benefits, and as we looked at the landscape of potential models out there, we thought being regulated by the SEC and FINRA, it did create a lot of hurdles for us. But we thought that the hurdles were well worth it. And as we look at what, as a registered broker-dealer, we'll have flexibility to do all parts of a life cycle for a company. We could do, their seed round, their A, B, C round. we could even do an IPO for a company. So I think it gives us more flexibility as we grow and mature as a financial institution to offer more products and services to these issuers.
Right. It is an interesting dimension that it really makes a difference to entrepreneurs, because it really determines where the cash goes at the end of the day, and with the raise. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out in the landscape as we watch all the different crowdfunding models get tested in coming months and years. Well, Todd, it's been just a real pleasure to have you. I appreciate you making the time for this discussion. It's really helpful for us to begin to understand all of the different aspects of crowdfunding, especially for equity, and we wish you every success with Seed Equity. I wonder if you'd be willing to just tell us a little bit about how people can approach you if they're interested in getting their deals on your platform.
Sure. So we're in the process. You know, we registered in February. Our license was issued in February. We're in the process of finalizing some technology. So we're hopeful in the next month that we'll be live, and that would be, you know, seedequity.com. There's a private beta website now that's not live to the public, but seedequity.com is our URL.
Great.
And that's the best way to reach in.
Well, fantastic. Todd, again, I wish to thank you and wish you every success in your new endeavor.
Thank you very much, Evan. Appreciate it.
All righty. Let's do some good.